adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Exactly the same skill as adding and subtracting fractions. Well, here we got 1.5 plus 2 3/4. One way of doing this, I'm going to show you two ways. One way of doing this is to separate these. So 1.5 is the same as 1 plus 1/2. And we're adding 2 3/4, which is the same as 2 plus 3/4. And now the commutative law tells us that we can add these in any order. So I'm going to do 1 plus 2, and then I'm going to add 1/2 plus 3/4. So this is clearly 1 plus 2 is clearly 3. So if I can work out what 1/2 plus 3/4 is, I am sorted. Let's do that over here. 1/2 plus 3/4. Well, here we need to find a common denominator, and in this case it is 4, because 4 is a multiple of 2. This fraction is going to be unchanged, and 1/2, if we're thinking of it in terms of quarters, 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, and 2/4 plus 3/4 makes 5/4. Ah, wow, look what's happened here. 5/4. I'm going to try and change that to a mixed number. Now, it's always good to give your answer in the same format as the question. So 5/4 is the same as 1 and 1/4. So we can add this on now. So we've got a 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1/2 plus 3/4 is 1 1/4. So we're going to add 1 and add 1/4. So our final answer for this example is 4 1/4. Here's a different approach to the same question. Instead of separating the integer and fraction part, I'm going to express the mixed numbers as improper fractions. So 1.5, how many halves make up 1.5? 1.5 is equivalent to 3 halves. And we're going to add, well, 2 3/4. How many quarters is that equivalent to? Well, that is equivalent to 11/4. Now I have it in this format, I can use the same method that I do for adding fractions. So I'm looking for a common denominator of 2 and 4. I'll notice that 4 is a multiple of 2. So I can use a common denominator of 4. 11/4 stays the same, but 3 halves is the same as 6/4. Now, because the denominators are the same, we can now add these two numerators together. 6/4 plus 11/4 makes 17/4, which we can of course write instead of an improper fraction. It's good practice to leave it in the same format as the answer. So 17/4 is the same as 4 1/4. Here's an example of subtracting mixed numbers. We're going to do 2 4/5 minus 1.5. Now I can separate the integer part and the fraction part like I did the first example, but it's a bit trickier with minus. I'd have 2 plus 4/5 minus 1 minus 1/2. It's a little bit trickier, so I'm going to opt for method 2. So how many fifths altogether is 2 4/5? Well, we know the denominator is 5 here, and it works out as 14/5. So 2 4/5 is the same as 14/5. And we're going to take away 1.5, which we already know is 3 halves. Once I've got them in this format, it's the same technique as adding and subtracting fractions. It's just these ones are improper. So we're looking for a common multiple of 5 and 2, which is 10 in this case. So So 14 fifths is the same as 28 tenths. These have the same value. They are equivalent fractions. And 3 halves is the same as 15 tenths. They have the same value. If you're not sure about how to find equivalent fractions, check out the video on equivalent fractions on this channel. Once we have them in the same denominator, we can work these out. So 28 tenths minus 15 tenths makes 13 tenths. Now that is the answer. It is correct, but it's good practice to give your answer in the same format as the question. So I'm just going to change this into a mixed number to finish. 13 tenths is the same as 1 whole and 3 tenths.